Hello.
Hello. Yeah, hi.
Who is? Hello, can you hear me?
Hello. Yeah, this is Deepak.
Okay, tell me.
Yeah. Actually, I got a response to one of the job position is the Scrum Master. Are you available for the same?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. And do you have any prior experience with payment?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So this position is with LTI, Larsen and Toubro Tech, while the end client here is Citibank, and we are looking for someone who can go on site in Tampa, Florida.
Okay.
And may I know on which project you have experience with payment?
Yeah, payment, Anthem, and
And some end
FedEx.
FedEx.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay. So could you just please elaborate what exactly experience you have in income and the FedEx using payment?
Yeah, you can see details in my resume.
Actually, I am unable to see the payment details over your resume.
Mhm.
I do have one in iHeartMedia in which you analyze the financial data to identify the relationship between the operation and the payment trend.
Okay.
But I'm yeah, so I'm unable to see the details over Ansem and the FedEx.
Okay, oh, so you can work with that one also, no problem.
I guess it won't
Because
work.
it's
That's
not
why
the
I'm
time
asking.
to edit the resume again and again. So I am actually busy with my current projects.
Hello and welcome to Stop Now Experiment Lab. This is the daily show. I'm your host, JK. I'm joined by Amar. Amar, welcome. We are having a happy Friday, just like every other day. Even before starting the show, we keep getting calls. And on the background, we have been working on it. And as we were talking about like different interviews and different recruiters, we just got an update like that we missed yesterday. That interview has been scheduled and we are trying to have that live interview today. Hopefully you will have some fun in this.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that will be really great, and that will be actually for audience also. They will get the chance to see the how they are taking the interview. Yeah, of course, it will be good for all of us.
Yes, as we were talking about the recruiters practices, right? So this is exactly what we have been doing it, like we have been scheduling this work here. Let me pull up like something that is relevant rather than showing which is not. Actually, this is the interview that has been scheduled, and I was going to share the same thing. This is the third company we are targeting again, IDC Technology. Not just that, right? Every other company has been giving the same protocol, right? The policy
Right.
of asking a GC copy and all.
Or DL
So,
copy. Yeah, today also one of
yes.
recruiter told me to share that.
Yes, either green card. If we refuse to do that, they ask like a DL copy.
Right.
So anyway, that apart, like we are going to have this interview in few minutes, right? Let's jump into that, prepare for that, and I will show the screen for that as well.
Okay. Yeah, by this.
Receive a call for a profile.
Well, you can go ahead and pick the calls. You can be in the
Hello.
background, mute yourself and take the calls.
Yeah, who is?
Nate, this is Karan.
Yeah, tell me.
Yeah, Nate, I've responded to you on your email. I'm waiting for your updated resume.
I sent it.
No, I think you haven't sent. I don't know.
Well, meanwhile, like Amar is playing the Nate role and picking up the calls, I am going to go as Shiva for the interview and start the call with them. We just have 2 more minutes on this. It looks like more of a discussion for a Scrum Master role. Just to give some context about what a Scrum Master role is about, while we do this interview, people will get to know that, like, and also people who are wondering like how this is being done. And this is the expose that we are trying to bring in. Again, it's not a justification for someone doing wrong. The others also have to do wrong and illegal things. So somebody is faking profile, somebody else is giving interview for that candidate and clear the interview and get the job, and someone else is doing the job remotely for the other person. These kind of things is not happening here and there. A whole network of people and large number of people are doing this. So we don't know how to stop this. So that's why like we are trying to mimic that and bring this thing to the attention of the public, and so that everybody knows that these kind of fraud and scam is happening, and how do we come together and resolve these problems. These are human behaviors, human-centric problems. Obviously, we just have to deal with these things. So meanwhile, I'm going to join. Let me share that, and then okay. Meanwhile, Amar, are you excited? I am excited and nervous.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I should be able to clear this interview. If not, that's like
Okay, let's see what happens.
should we say to them like the interview is being live streamed on YouTube? So,
Hey, Mani. Mani, you can hear me.
hi. Hi, Pranay.
Yeah.
I'm okay. So are you as well going to be there, or just you are, no, are you going to be on video as well? Okay. Oh, so you are the recruiter. I'm sorry. I forgot that.
Mani, like, did you enable your video?
Yeah, I did. Are you not able to see me? Okay, let me probably rejoin. I don't know. It does shows like the video at my end.
Hi, Mani. Mani is. Are you able to see Mani? I see the complete blank here. Are you able to see? Yeah, I see complete black. Yeah, black screen. Mani, like, can you rejoin?
Okay, I'll do that. All right, so we are having trouble. It's not allowing us to join on video. And they want like to be on video. So let's see. And this is going to be a big problem with the phone calls.
Hey, Mani.
Yes.
Mani, you can hear us?
Yes, I can hear you guys. Can you?
Yeah. Can you please enable again? Yeah, I can hear you very clear.
Okay.
And Kamal, please connect your video to take the call from here. You can hear us? Yeah. Yeah.
Are you able to see my video or?
No.
Kamal, we are unable to see you. Yeah, now it's very clear. Both are visible. Mani, I think you can see Kamal. Yeah.
All right. We'll take it forward.
Yeah, yeah. Kamal, please
Okay.
take it forward.
Yeah. Hi, Mani. Can you tell me about yourself and what is your work experience?
Sure. So I've been in the IT industry for more than 15 years, and the last 12 to more than a decade, I would say, like I've been on the project management side in different enterprise clients. So I come from the traditional waterfall model of working on different projects with portfolio level, program level managers to track and schedule budget. Those are my regular things, but in the recent 7-8 years, I would say like it's been extensively on the agile front. So I transformed myself and got certified as a Scrum Master. And I believe this role is for the Scrum Master. So I have that extensive experience of enterprise level Scrum framework models. So in the recent client, like though it's a banking domain, though in the banks, they don't traditionally use everything in the agile fashion. So we have to go with the hybrid model. So that's where like my title is like a project manager. Still, I help the product owners, and some of the projects are in the Scrum framework as well. So this is my overall brief. And if you want me to go into the specific details, or if you have any questions, we'll go from there.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. So as a Scrum Master role, what is your responsibilities and how do you handle the project? Can you explain a bit?
As such, right, Scrum is an agile framework, and also in the Scrum framework, we go by the people-oriented approach rather than process-oriented. But still, enterprise clients are struggling to move towards that. It's a change in mindset, and Scrum Masters are facilitators, right? So they come from the servant leadership, where they have to implement these Scrum ceremonies, it's like kind of implementing the methodologies, right? There is nothing wrong with the waterfall methodology or any other methodologies, including the agile. So Scrum is a Scrum framework is a simple one, so which can be implemented like to have fast tracking of the project and more visibility, and also kind of piecemeal kind of thing. It's an iterative development model. It comes from a different mode of operation. So in that, like the Scrum Masters facilitates the business and the technology teams and help them like to follow the processes and ensure that like that can be successfully provide the business value that is needed. So we go by the daily stand-up, which is not a regular practice in waterfall methodology. So having a daily stand-up call or daily Scrum for 15 minutes with getting the update from the team and knowing the issues and blockers, that helps the team like to fast track and identify the issues and resolve those things. And also iteratively develop in the sense like every 2 weeks, like you try to deliver some small piece of output for the business to approve on and build on those things. So that they can avoid the scope creep and a larger backlog of issues. So basically it's like a product oriented approach in which like we have the sprint planning at the beginning of the sprint, and also sprint retrospective at the end of it, like having the feedback loop mechanism. All these processes help us like to deliver the project in a better way.
Okay. So you mentioned you have a daily stand-up meetings. So what will you discuss and what kind of tool you have used for this project to track the work and user stories?
Yes, in terms of client wise, like there are different tools available, and most popularly like they use Jira and Confluence, and I have experience on Rally as well and Azure DevOps. So it depends on client to client, and the most I have come across in my experience was like using the Jira. We create the daily Scrum board, and from that, like we assign the task and user stories like to the particular development teams, and also the analyst if they have the analyst in the teams. So that way, like each one of the team members, along with the product owners, though some of them they don't have to give. It's not a status update. It's like getting what they have done the day before and what they are going to do the day. For example, today they are meeting. They will give like what they have completed the yesterday and what they are going to complete today, and any roadblocks or impediments, like the issues that they are facing. So that's all they have to provide. Like it's like a 15 minutes call, just a brief update on what is happening in the sprint cycle. So that way, like the Scrum Master or the team members can track like how we can progress. If there is any roadblock, I just set up a follow-up meeting, ad hoc meetings, and try to reach out to the respective stakeholders to resolve those things. So within that next day cycle, we get to complete that. These are the activities. Usually we do it in Scrum.
Okay. If the team comes up with all the problems and as a Scrum Master, how do you track those issues? How do you prioritize?
Yes. So initially, when we create a product backlog, I work with the product owners as well as the analysts and the architects, so that we define the scope of the work, as well as like while creating the product backlog, we get to know like the prioritization of it, like which are the high priority items. We bring those things to the top of the backlog, and even like some of the enterprise clients, they go ahead and get to have more visibility by story pointing it and having t-shirt sizing. That way, like we have a complete prioritized backlog with definition of done and having those acceptance criteria embedded into the user stories. That way the team can easily avoid any kind of back and forth issues. But still, if any technical issues comes up, any blockers are there, we try to address those things on case by case and resolve those things with the respective stakeholders.
Okay, so say you are in the middle of the sprint and the product owner comes in and said, can I please stop whatever the user stories you have selected for the particular sprint, and the new user story needs to be developed and implemented in that particular sprint. How do you take on that as a Scrum Master?
Yes, so that is where like we use this strategy of negotiation and trying to explain the Scrum concept like to the product owners and the business to avoid scope creeps, and not to, because as such sprint cycle are limited, right? Unless some of the clients go with the release management with a release cycle of monthly release cycle, 3-week sprint or 4-week sprint, but usually it is like a 2-week sprint. Even 1-week sprint is possible, but it's not feasible in practicality with the testing team to complete all those things and business sign off as well. So that's where like 2-week sprint cycle is a standard one where we define the sprint goal as such. So when that is done with the agreement with the business, with the product owner, the team's commitment is the sprint goal. So making those changes will definitely impact the metrics and the burn down chart and the reports. So we try to explain those things. But in case of emergency or any break fixes or production issues that needs to be handled by the team, so there is some buffer and flexibility between the team to accommodate those kind of smaller changes and requests. Again, it is all based on case by case, and that's how like we try to negotiate and work with the business team and the product owners to get these things going.
Well, so as a Scrum Master, how do you pick up the user stories, and what kind of estimation have you used in your project?
Again, as I reiterate, like it's not up to the Scrum Master. It's like they are the facilitators and providing the opportunity for the business and the teams to come together and pick up the stories that needs to be prioritized, and the product owners and the team can decide like which one to. And I facilitate that. And in that way, it depends on enterprise clients' comfort level. Most of them like go with their own story pointing methods, but the best practice is Fibonacci series. Like why I go by that is like because it gives you the complexity and the risk, everything to be inbuilt into the story pointing. So that way, like they can maximize the production and efficiency in delivering the output. But it all depends on the team. Like even with the current one, like they go by the t-shirt sizing, having small, medium, large, and extra large. That way, like they limit it like to the maximum of 5 story point, and more than that, like if it is 8, we have to break it down into smaller tasks and subtasks. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. So okay. So moving on. So have you captured any metrics for the work the team has performed, and what kind of metrics?
Yes, certainly at the end of the sprint, like even from the Jira itself, like we get to have the burn down chart. And also apart from that, like as a project manager, I play the dual role. So my purpose is in the bank like to track the resources and monitor the vendor resources and allocate the budget and have the cost benefit analysis and how many the billing hours and those things. Capacity planning has also to be taken into account. So we track those things as well and generate reports for providing it like to the program directors at the PMO level on a weekly meetings, providing a rack status on the status of each projects with slide deck presentations.
So can you explain what kind of validation will be performed in the sprint retrospective?
Yes, sprint retro is one of my favorite. I would say like it is more of a feedback mechanism loop where the business stakeholders and though it is purely for the team, we combine it like with the sprint demo, like providing like what is being delivered and what needs to be taken forward and how the next sprint planning can happen. And also the left out items to be moved to the backlog or to the next sprint. Those things will be discussed in those demo session, followed by the retro is for the team to evaluate like how they have performed in the sprint, what went wrong and what can be improved upon. It's like more of an action items. So for each one of them, like to self-organize and look into their commitments, right? So they have agreed in the sprint planning with the sprint goal, this is my delivery. And if they are not able to meet it, like why they are not able to meet it. So we document those things, get feedbacks and criticism, positive criticism to improve on, and action items will be noted on. And we vote on those things like which are the top 3 items to be addressed. And that way, like I follow up and try to resolve those things. And that is not resolved in the next couple of sprint retros, then we really need to address those things because it is a continuous recurring issue that is happening over here.
Okay. So in the end of the sprint, the developer delivers the code, and since it lasts 1 day to complete the task, If it is unfinished user story, how do you handle it?
Yes, so that is where, like in the middle of the sprint itself, we try to track like which are the things that is going to be completed, and also we get the feedback from them, like what is happening over there and why they are not able to progress. Because even with the testing team, they need to test it. Like if they give it at the end of the sprint, like on the last day, they will not be able to do it. So that is where like we try to avoid those things, having the buffer period, and also planning it like with 70%, 80% capacity for each of those resources. So that way, like we try to make sure everything is committed. In spite of all those things, if they are not able to, and we will try to address those things case by case and try to avoid those scenarios like coming up in the future sprints for those particular resources.
Okay, can you explain a bit about the DoD and how it is achieved?
Yes, so definition of done is like more important in terms of establishing the criteria. So it's more of how we define the definition of ready, and definition of done is for the business and the development team like to accept those acceptance criteria. So that way, like we can easily establish the ground rules for testing it and validating it, and finally giving an approval and sign off to go to the production.
So have you used any burn down chart validation, and what is the difference between burn down chart and velocity?
Yes, as part of the metrics, like when we take down the burn down chart at the end of it, like how the curve shows the progress of the team, and based on that, like what capacity planning has to happen, and each team members capacity relating to the velocity of the overall progress that is being made is being redefined, and also it can be gradually increased over the time, right? It all depends on the maturity and the level of comfort the team is going to handle those user stories. So that way, like we can try to improve those velocity over the period. So if you set a high standard at the initial stage, it might give a wrong perspective of the team is not performing well and they are struggling with the agile processes. So it is always like better to have those buffer period and a fail-safe method to start with, and then go gradually in an incremental manner.
Yeah, so in your project, whether all the team resources are located as geographically distributed or co-located, and what is the benefits of having co-located?
Yes, in agile terms, like in principle wise, like Scrum framework, co-located teams perform well because you have those regular interactions and benefit of having all the ceremonies on time. But it's not feasible with the geographically distributed teams and also big enterprise clients where it's a multi-million dollar, multi-year projects, and they have many vendors competing, and also onshore offshore model. I've worked with different companies, like, so all those things differs in the time zone, and also they have to be flexible and accommodate those requests. So that way, like it becomes a little bit challenge in terms of organizing those scrum meetings and regular calls. But still every other vendors are cooperative on that, like, and that's how like they end up like extending the work hours for their offshore resources, and they try to manage and accommodate. So that way, like we try to be flexible on that.
Fair enough. Okay. So if the customer is very rigid about the waterfall methodology, and if you put in that environment, and if you want to explain them about the benefits of agile Scrum, how do you convince them? having a waterfall methodology. And
Can you repeat the
to
question?
move
Like,
into, say, if you put in a customer place and they are working on a waterfall methodology, and you have to convince them to move on to the agile methodology by saying the benefits of having the agile. How do you convince the customer?
I had
What
not
is the
come
benefits of
across.
having?
No, I haven't come across, because the client has already established agile Scrum frameworks and center of excellence, and coaches are there. So my role was like to help them out and implement those Scrum Master roles. Like I actually don't start from the scratch, like to explain them like what is the benefit. But to theoretically, if you ask that, like yes, I can answer that. Like the reason is the benefit can be achieved by seeing the results, right? So it is more on how we perform and what is the scope of the delivery and how we are planning. Because when we don't have a complete business scope, requirements or requirement documents, but then they do have a timeline, and most of the enterprise client projects are multi-year, as I mentioned. It is like ongoing thing. For that, like they want to have an iterative development, and within that calendar here, what you can deliver with this amount of budget. So that way, like we can try to do justification with coming up with the agile model and how we can iteratively develop and have the iterative planning in the 3 months period to have the benefit in analyzing the cost benefit factors for those projects. It is all up to the top management and the executive level. And that's why, like I said, like the change in mindset has to come from top level. And if the top level is not supportive of the agile framework, then it becomes harder. So in those cases, we have to go on explaining these benefits of implementing the agile. But practically, I have never come across, because most of the clients are already into this agile mindset. So they have some system in place. Only thing is like it has to be mature enough, and how the teams can really progress and do well from the process oriented approach to people oriented approach.
Okay, good. Say if your team is new to agile, will you able to coach them, and what are the tasks you will list out? Can you do that?
Yes, in terms of if the team is new, that's good, because they are fresh and they have no idea. Then it's like getting trained and getting certified. Like Scrum framework, it's a simple one, right? So you can master it like within few days or in a week. But how you practice it is what matters. So for explaining it to the new teams, it's more of giving them the presentation on what are the Scrum values, what are the Scrum concept, and how we can implement those things with the Scrum ceremonies, like by going by the sprint planning, what it means to have daily stand-up call, and how we are going to do the backlog grooming and refinement session, and also story pointing method, and also having the using different tools like planning focus and other things, like in a fun way, like how we can implement these things and get the result of the sprint cycles. So that I will explain it in the beginning for all the stakeholders, including the business and the team. And also to make sure, like, because most of these enterprise clients have big team sizes, right? So it has to be sprint, has to be like Scrum has to be in a smaller cycle, right? 7 to 10 members or maximum of 12. More than that, we have to break it into 2 or 3 Scrum. And that's where like we have the Scrum of Scrums, and also we do those things as well, like as part of the enterprise operations.
Okay, fair enough. So one last question. In a sprint retrospective meeting, if a team comes up and gives all the negative things, how do you coach them, and how do you act on that situation?
Correct me if I'm wrong. Like, so if the during the retro,
There are
like
a lot of negative feedbacks comes up in the sprint retrospective. How do you take on those negative things, and how do you overcome that challenge?
yes, that's a good question. Again, when we set up this Scrum model as such, giving the presentation to everyone, to the stakeholders, and motivating them to go with this approach definitely has to provide an opportunity for them to be more positive. And as you said, right, so if we are not performing well, then obviously the negative feedback will come up, but it's not it's a regular thing, right? Because there has to be some positive. If we are not able to deliver anything at the end of the sprint, then certainly we will have that scenario. And over the sprint cycles, right, in the 4 or 5 sprint cycle, if we don't get to resolve these things, then there is definitely a pushback from the top down as well, like saying what's happening over there. So that is where like we are documenting all these things as well. So people can bring in motivation and give positive. So what happened actually and how we can resolve those things. And it's not like it's bad. Negative things is like to identify where we are falling short of. So how we can resolve those things with the action plans. So that way, like I try to minimize those things.
Yeah, then nice talking to you, Mani. Any questions for me or Pranay?
I mean,
That's
in
all.
terms of the client, and I'm more of a people person, and since I've played the Scrum Master for quite some time, I would like to know like what is the team size, what is the team culture, and how is the client like move forward in this.
So, Pranay, do you want to chime in?
Yes, Mani, client is waste management here, and coming to this, we do have a big team. We are implementing the project actually. So
I'm
for
tired,
now,
man.
we will
I'm
speak on this,
giving this
further,
interview.
in other class, okay? Mani, you can hear us?
Yeah. Did I lose you? Sorry, did I lose you?
Yeah. You lost us. The client is waste management here. It's a very big client, and we are implementing the project. So there is a very big team over there. And I will come back to you more details on the client details and what the actual role in the next steps. Okay.
All right, sounds good. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Mani.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, good day. Bye. Well, that was a tough one.
Yeah, right.
What do you
Long
think
time.
about that? Did I manage to pull this up? You have to tell me.
Sorry, I beg your pardon.
No, how was the interview? Like, did I pull it off? Did I do well?
Yeah, of course you did well, and you will get the job, I believe.
I don't know. This is more of a screening, right? So at the end, that's why, like, at the end, like, I just showed
Mhm.
the interviewer was without exposing my mask. So that way, like, audience can see like what we are doing here. And as I shared already, like the interview is done now, and we will get to know like whether it goes through the next round or this is not the end client, I'm sure. And we will definitely get to have more things to discuss in the coming weeks. And already, again, I forgot to tell you that, like, even we had this interview for Nate, and it was the end client thing. And if we get a chance, we will publish that and we will share that like to our audience in the live stream in the experiment lab as well.
Sure. Yeah, and you will be glad to know that we got 3 invitations for Net Profile.
Let's go with that. I think probably we will be busy. I shouldn't have started with being Happy Friday. It's going to be a tough one. We are going to have
Busy
back-to-back
Friday. Right.
meetings and interviews. We will go with that. But right now, today, I think we had an extensive work of showing the live interview itself, giving it for somebody else. So that's a first step, like for us, like to make some interesting viewers coming to our experimental lab, the daily show. So that's all I have for today because I am a bit exhausted after the interview. So let's take a break.
Okay. Yeah. Bye for now.
Bye for now. We will
See you
meet
tomorrow.
on
Yeah.
our talk show in the weekend.
Right. Okay. Bye.
Bye.